Good morning, Chris. Good to see you. Signature models that are the same each time, but otherwise people can choose not only their cosmetic, they can also choose the playability, the shape of the neck, and we help them determine the sound. Nobody can really describe what they want, but it's pretty easy to learn what they need. If you think of your sound system, the knobs and sliders, they're there because those are personal choices. EQ, volume, tone, etc. And if they were right or wrong, you wouldn't have knobs and sliders. So we can control those, which I'll show you later on that. And we also do a process from violin making that assures the guitar's quality of sound, the stuff everybody likes, which I'll show you also. And so by the time it gets in here, this setup process becomes critical for bringing out all that potential. As you well know, if the setup's not done correctly, you don't get the full effect of the guitar. So Darren and Chris are really expert at setting up a guitar old-fashioned way by hand, which is also dangerous if you're not careful. You can really get hurt. So this is why we use the plec, which you're very familiar with. I don't have to sell you on the plec. But this allows us a consistency, allows us to see things we can't see with our eye, and really important, it collects the data on each guitar we do. So 10 years from now, we get a guitar in for service, and we see how it's changed, and that helps us to better build guitars. In this room, the guitars will come in with the body and the neck polished, and we put them, then we put them together. And this is so in the future we can take them apart like a Martin instead of a Guild. Yeah, that's
for our friends in Switzerland.
Yeah, that's an oldie now.
Yeah,
it is. So let me introduce you to Darren. Darren, do you remember Urs from this last visit? And his son Misha.
Yeah.
Good. This is Colin Hayes' guitar. You know, Men at Work. And this is a thing for his mother.
Isabella. Okay.
Isabella. And boy, he works these. Yeah, he did.
That's.
Is that a dog hair? It looks like a little caracosis.
Yeah.
Brazilian rosewood. So Darren and I worked together for 108 years. We were kids when we started, and Darren's done everything in the shop, and years of setup, repair, and so knowing the guitars so well, he's the perfect one to take care of all the stuff that goes on out in the world. And also here we collect information that helps us make better guitars on that. Yeah. So always something fun. Hey.
Hi.
Atmosphere is the middle of the guitar playing world in temperature and the amount of water in the air. And building at that center, then the guitar can go to a drier place or a more wet place and have the most comfort before it becomes, the action raise gets hard to play. If it's too humid, if it gets too dry, it could crack. And nobody has any sense of humor at this price with their guitar cracking. What's in common with these, they mostly come from families that I've met and in the past traveled to verify that it's the right way that wood's being handled. And just, I'll try to keep the stories flow. This is all redwood. This is all from the Klamath River up near the Oregon border. Did you happen to see the movie? It was based on a Ken Kesey book called Sometimes a Great Notion in English. And it was about after World War II. What the wood does, there's a lot of folklore, of course, internet is a great place for opinions, about what wood does to the sound of a guitar. But the science is it really contributes to the scale of clarity. If you played as a singer-songwriter, perhaps you want the guitar to be like a, like a warm presence and accompany. It's not the soloist, right? So a wood that has a more warmer, more blended tone. Here's a better one. If you imagine a series of 10 little bells, they ring at the same note, the same volume, but the material makes them brighter or warmer. At one end is maybe bronze or brass, and at the other end is silver, which is really bright, clear, articulate sound. And these spruces exhibit that really well. Here's spruces from British Columbia, Canada, Alaska, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and the American spruce, Sitka, is a warmer blended sound. It's the most popular for most players. Adirondack also. Adirondack and the European are brighter and clearer. So think of our artist that played at the show. Catfish Keith needs a warm, organic sound. He does a lot of single notes, but they're really bluesy and rich. Eric Sky plays so perfectly. He wants the audience to hear every note he plays separately and all the nuance he puts into it. So a wood like Adirondack or European's perfect because it's very articulate. You hear everything in it. Again, these are all, there's all stories with that. The Sitka is always old. It comes from trees that fell, washed out to sea, or buried in a lake, or maybe even an old bridge that's been taken apart. You probably know these people. We buy from Kolitz in Germany, Fritz Kolitz and his son Oliver now, and in Switzerland, Italian border, Rudolf Bachmann and Andreas Florinet, tonewoods. Yeah, great people, and they're really responsible in how they cut. So that's good. So there's how we use the woods. So when a customer comes to us, they don't really know how to describe it, but they know what they like. And we learn what they like from listening to how they play, what their influences are, what other guitar players are influences, and what is their favorite guitar, what do they like, what would they like more of, less of, and with those comparisons we can put together the recipe to repeat that sound. We can also take an old existing guitar and reverse engineer that and give them that sound, but maybe change the EQ or things like that, which I'll show you in a minute. So these woods are, again, there's stories about them all, and there's another way we can get responsible harvest, and it's called sustainable yield. It's like a Christmas tree farm. You plant a tree, you wait till it grows, but the next year you plant another tree, so like this, and you can harvest the mature ones and keep it going. And they do that with both mahogany and Fiji. And this is a great story. In World War I, the British were afraid of losing their mahogany resource in South America to Germany. And but you can't hide it. But they did. They took it to Fiji and replanted and began a sustainable forest there. Boy, this is walnut, our California walnut, which I just love. I grew up with it. But under this is this redwood that was up in our mountains at a higher altitude, and it would have the tree before logging, so naturally fell into the river and was, locked in the rocks, and for probably 300 to 500 years, based on how the end of the log was decayed. Then in a storm in about 2020, it got dislodged, washed out to sea, and then finally came back on the beach. And it took me about 5 years to talk the guy out of this. But what you see here, all this sparkle, that's when the tree is cut perfectly vertically, but that doesn't mean you'll see it. Sometimes it's just slightly off, so every cut has to be adjusted to follow that through there. And the guy we work with is a real artist in this. And the color's beautiful. Also, it's very, very stiff. First, I'll explain how to mass produce if you want to make 1 million guitars a year. And this is an important thing. This is how people, learn to play guitar. There's many places in the world where a guitar, no matter how inexpensive, is really a lot of money. So inexpensive guitars are a wonderful thing. And to do that, to get the price low, of course, everything you have to do has to be very efficient. And in short, that means you don't have any time to worry about how the guitar is going to sound, right? So we'll start with the top. Yeah, if you don't mind pulling that one out from under there, thank you. This is Adirondack top, so it's in a dreadnought. Dreadnought's traditional in things like bluegrass, folk, country, but it's changed over time. Originally, the bluegrass guitar, when a band had one microphone, the violin and the mandolin would do the leads, and the guitar was the drums, right? But as people like Dan Curry, Doc Watson, Tony Rice came along, they stepped up front and did the leads with the guitar, so we needed more clarity. So an old pre-war Martin could be kind of tubby and hugely bassy. The Adirondack brings a clarity to that, so you hear high end more distinctly. So that's what the story is on this dreadnought. It's measured at 3.2 millimeters, and that would be on the treble side, which will be the thickest part. I'll explain that. But 3.2 isn't the target. It's the result of reaching the target. And that was all these things that I talked about. When that's correct, we'll measure it to keep that record. This is for a right-handed player. And what we've done is when we made this thickness, we made the bass side about 2 to 4/10 of a millimeter thinner, because bass responds to flexibility where treble is enhanced by stiffness. Now, it's just putting pre-sized pieces on the top, which is what the factory does. Even though they're cut to look pretty like this, they're just random pieces, and I say that because I'll just show you. So random pieces of wood mean random notes, like throwing rocks at a piano, and that means you could get anything. If you throw enough rocks at a piano, you might get a chord, you might get harmony, but most likely not, or somewhere in between. So if we listen to this random array of notes, we'll hear first, pretty dead. So not many of these are agreeing. That's dead. That's awful. Hear that? A little color, a little sustain. That's okay. Good. Dead. Dead. And so on. So rocks at the piano means this will be maybe an okay sounding guitar, but it's not going to be great. What's happening is the ones that are clear, that vibrational link just happens to miss the other ones. The ones that are dead are crashing head on into an opposing one and dying immediately. And so harmony, or agreeing wavelengths, allows sustain and the developments of overtones, which is what we all want to hear. Opposing ones are like, might as well string the table up, right? So to control that, which again a factory can't do because it takes time, money, and they lose their price advantage. So here's one that this is like a fingerstyle guitar. Cedar responds quicker with more volume than spruce for the same amount of energy that you put into it. So it's a great wood for fingerstyle. especially when you do an open tuning, the strings are lower, they put less energy and volume in the guitar, and when you use cedar, it compensates for that. So we've shaped these, and as we did it, we tuned it. So this one, sorry for that noise, but you'll hear it. Maybe it towards you. More musical and more sustained. And if you listen to these notes now, they all sustain, they're colorful, the whole thing makes music, right? So that right there is the biggest secret, if you will, of Stradivari, the school of Amati. Remember before, we're upside down here, we make the treble side more flexible. Here, here, and moving these peaks out. And that makes it less loud and makes the bass more predominant. And then we come out, scallop here, leave these for strings, and take this out, making the bass much more flexible but still strong, and that increases the bass. So our graphic equalizer looks like bass like this, treble like this. This one, also, if you move this forward, it opens this up for more bass, makes it more flexible. If you move it back, it stiffens it up and lowers the bass. And that's what, like, pre-war Martin with the advanced deck, they're bassier for that reason. And then we have another example of a guitar that this is for, let's say, fingerstyle jazz, where the player does not want the guitar telling them the EQ. They'll determine that by how they play. So this is balanced. We've stiffened up the treble. You can see the difference here. These peaks come forward, this is not scalloped. So that stiffness really raises the treble volume. And then we taper dramatically here to bring the bass up, not completely even, because to the human ear, we don't hear. All based on wet wood, hot metal, steam, relaxing the fibers, and different woods take different precautions to not break. Weight is what's critical. Its weight and substance. It also contributes to tone. Maple, cocobolo are bright and clear. Mahogany, koa, more warm. But the shape of it is really critical because, most seal string guitars will taper, narrower at the neck and wider at the tail. And the idea with that is kind of like the Venturi effect, where air goes in and comes out faster, but it's half of it. So when you begin to compress air here under the bridge, as it moves towards the sound hole, as it tapers, it accelerates and keeps the momentum going out the sound hole. So it's really important to that taper. Now, this stuff is a very cool trick. And fitting these, we're trying to get as least tension as possible. Strong. We want to do strong by shapes and engineering. Spray a sealer coat to keep fingerprints off and stuff we don't want it to spray in the guitar. We're going to trim this and then we'll bind it. So we'll cut the ledges. Here we have the before, and here is the after. That's music. Isn't that great? So we're back in tune. Actually, when I'm sanding this and it's noisy, I can tell by how much air blows on my face the closer it's getting. And we're considering structure. We don't go too thin, but that's not necessary. Right now he's fitting the dovetail to the body. And we use a dovetail joint for a really important reason. Mind you, it's not better, but for us, it's, bolting it on is cheaper, faster, easy to get the neck out, but it doesn't allow us another way to control the sound of the guitar. And that is, I call it the presence. But it's where, I talk about the violin's presence, it's really focused. you know, it's like a spotlight, or even more a laser beam that goes out to the audience. Second tuning of the body I showed you is done in here because that you can get that again by the air blowing on your face and the feel of vibration. You don't have to hear so much. And then everything's designed for safety. This is one of our inlay patterns that people choose, so it only makes sense to cut this. And this one is the guy's business logo. He's a water scientist.
Okay.
And so that's done by hand. And in this case, these are both mahogany, but we wanted a little contrast, so a lighter mahogany. This is the tree, the famous one-of-a-kind figured mahogany. Sometimes it's not even meant to be noticed. This is probably a German or Italian spruce, same species, by the way.
Huh?